What makes a man turn into a cold, calculating killer? Is it poverty, a troubled childhood, or something far more chilling? An emptiness inside, one that no therapist, no priest, no relative can ever reach. Howard Arthur Allen's name rarely comes up when people list America's most notorious serial killers. But between 1974 and 1987, this quiet man from Indiana embarked on a brutal killing spree, targeting the elderly, the vulnerable, the forgotten. His crimes were shocking, not just for their violence, but for their utter randomness. Allen wasn't driven by hatred, revenge, or even personal gain. He was driven by opportunity. Welcome to Crime Lab Chronicles, where we dissect the world's most chilling true crime cases, break down the forensic science, and shine a light into the darkest corners of human behavior. If you're fascinated by how killers are caught and cases are cracked, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us as we step inside the mind of Howard Arthur Allen, one of America's most underreported serial predators. Early life, the making of a killer. Howard Arthur Allen was born on February 10, 1949, in Indianapolis, Indiana. He grew up in poverty, the youngest of 8 children. His father wasn't in the picture, and his mother struggled to support the family on her own. By all accounts, Howard's childhood was marked by neglect, deprivation, and limited opportunities. Allen was intellectually challenged. He had been classified as borderline mentally retarded in school, and by age 15, his IQ was measured at 80. He dropped out of school early and floated between odd jobs. But while many around him struggled and survived, Allen soon turned to darker paths. His first known encounter with the law came in 1974, when he was just 25. Allen committed a burglary and assault that would send him to prison. But this wasn't the story of a man learning his lesson behind bars. Instead, prison seemed to harden Allen. And when he was released in 1985, his real reign of terror was about to begin. The killing spree. Between 1987 and 1988, a wave of violent attacks on elderly residents shook the city of Indianapolis. Victims were found beaten, strangled, stabbed, or bludgeoned, often in their own homes, and often with no sign of forced entry. Police initially thought these were robberies gone wrong, but a chilling pattern emerged. The victims were overwhelmingly elderly, often living alone. There was no clear motive. In some cases, nothing was stolen. The attacks were extremely violent, far beyond what was necessary for robbery. The most well-known of Allen's murders was the killing of Ernestine Griffin, an 87-year-old woman beaten to death with a wine bottle. But Allen's confirmed victim list includes at least 3 murders, plus a series of assaults and burglaries. Authorities suspected he may have been responsible for up to 9 murders. Allen's method was disturbingly simple. He selected vulnerable victims, often elderly women, and attacked them with whatever was at hand: a stick, a bottle, even his bare hands. There was no sophistication, no elaborate planning, and that randomness is what made him so dangerous. The investigation and arrest. For months, police were scrambling. The attacks left few clues, and the victims, elderly, often without family or regular visitors, weren't always discovered right away. The breakthrough came when police linked Allen to the murder of Ernestine Griffin. Neighbors had seen a strange man lurking near her home, and police began canvassing the area. Allen was brought in for questioning. Initially, he denied everything. But police noted his past burglary convictions and began pressing harder. Eventually, Allen confessed to the Griffin murder and several others. His confession shocked investigators, not because he admitted guilt, but because of how emotionless he seemed. There was no rage, no sorrow, no attempt to justify his actions. He calmly described how he entered homes, beat his victims, and left. When asked why, he simply said he needed money, or sometimes he couldn't explain at all. The trial and conviction. In 1988, Howard Arthur Allen was charged with multiple counts of murder, burglary, and assault. The prosecutors faced a tough decision: focus on a few solid cases or try to pin him for every suspected crime. They chose to pursue the Griffin case as the strongest, and Allen was convicted of murder and burglary. The jury sentenced him to death. Allen showed little reaction during sentencing. Over the years, Allen's defense team filed numerous appeals, citing his low IQ and intellectual disability. They argued that under U.S. law, executing someone with significant intellectual disability was unconstitutional. This argument gained traction, especially after the Supreme Court's 2002 ruling in Atkins v. Virginia, which banned the death penalty for individuals with intellectual disabilities. In 2010, Allen's death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment without parole. He remained behind bars in Indiana until his death in 2020. The forensic angle. What makes the Howard Arthur Allen case particularly interesting from a forensic standpoint is how old-school police work cracked the case. This was the late 1980s, before widespread DNA databases, before advanced surveillance cameras, before cell phone tracking. Detectives had to rely on eyewitness accounts from neighbors, pattern recognition across crime scenes, confession evidence carefully obtained during interrogation. Had Allen's spree occurred a decade later, DNA analysis might have directly tied him to crime scenes. But at the time, forensic science was still limited, and solving cases like this depended heavily on shoe-leather detective work. Understanding the mind of Allen. One of the most unsettling aspects of Allen's case is the absence of clear motivation. He wasn't killing out of jealousy, anger, or revenge. He wasn't part of a larger criminal enterprise. He wasn't even a sexually motivated killer, as seen in many serial cases. Instead, Allen was a predator of opportunity. He knew the elderly were vulnerable, and he targeted them without remorse. Psychologists have speculated that Allen's cognitive limitations may have blunted his ability to understand or process empathy. Others suggest he became desensitized over years of petty crime, crossing the line into murder without much internal struggle. But perhaps the most chilling takeaway is this: you don't have to be brilliant or cunning to be dangerous. Sometimes, the most dangerous killers are the ones who are simply indifferent. Legacy and impact. Howard Arthur Allen's crimes left scars on Indianapolis that lasted long after his arrest. For many elderly residents, the idea that a stranger could simply walk in and beat them to death shattered any sense of safety. Law enforcement learned hard lessons too. The importance of recognizing patterns early, the need for better protection of vulnerable populations, and the challenges of prosecuting cases when the suspect may have intellectual disabilities. Despite his grim body count, Allen's name rarely makes it into the headlines alongside Bundy, Dahmer, or Gacy. Perhaps that's because his crimes lack the media spectacle or sensationalism. But his story is a stark reminder. Serial murder can come in many forms, and not all of them make the news. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of America's lesser-known serial killers. This has been Crime Lab Chronicles, where we uncover the stories, science, and psychology behind the world's darkest crimes. If you found this episode compelling, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, even in the quietest corners, the shadows are always watching.